name in Pod 6 along with Miss Brianna, Miss Jamie, and Miss Jackie. Today we'll be discussing school nutrition standards as we are the supporting team for local selection of foods in schools. So what are federal school nutrition programs and school nutrition standards? That is going to be any type of program that is supported by a federal government that consists of set guidelines and rules that all schools and institutions should follow to ensure that children are fed healthy food during school hours. For example, the United States government has a National School Lunch Program, for short, that's going to be the NSLP, which is a federally assisted meal program operating in a public, nonprofit private schools and residential child care institutions. It provides nutritionally balanced, low cost, or free lunches to children each school day. So another example we want to discuss is the US federal programs in the US is the Child and Adult Care Food Program, for short CACFP, which is a federal program that provides reimbursements for nutritious meals and snacks to eligible children and adults who are enrolled for care at participating child care centers, daycare homes, and adult daycare centers. So both of these programs have many benefits and positive outcomes, but today our pod will be discussing the barriers and the negative effects of school nutrition standards. Our pod will lay out 3 key points to support the argument of local selection for school food. These key points will include how universal standardized nutrition guidelines can result in various negative consequences, how standardized school nutrition lunch programs may create humiliating stigma, and lastly, offer an alternative approach, and why implementing a policy would be more beneficial than standardized guidelines for school nutrition. We believe that local government officials, local nutritional professionals, and citizens should have the choice of what children are fed during school hours. We will be arguing that locals should have maximum autonomy to generate the best outcome for children to grow and develop. So now Ms. Brianna is going to be starting us off with our first key point.
I'm Brianna, and I'm going to be going over the first point of our argument. The first reason that we believe that there should be a federally standardized school lunch program is because the strict guidelines that are currently in place have a lot of negative consequences. It is impossible for a simple blanket cookie cutter set of examples and guidelines to be culturally appropriate and let alone autonomous. Following the implementation of the new guidelines, community-based research was conducted in Massachusetts in a high school where 98% of students were students of color, and 86% of those students qualified for either free or reduced lunch. They collected information from students, parents, staff, and school leadership and concluded that there was an overwhelming consensus of insufficient portion sizes and dislike of taste. There was also an increase in unhealthy food consumption outside of school, which was a result of students choosing not to eat the lunch provided during school hours. There was a common saying around the food lunch program of, can we just have some sazon, which is a distinctively savory spice that is a staple in many Puerto Rican, Dominican, and Mexican cooking. The majority of people said that they appreciated the increase of freshness of the food. However, it did not increase their participation in the program. This shows that students don't necessarily want unhealthy types of food. They just want foods that they are accustomed to. While stakeholders appreciated the educational value of the program, there is a lack of student and family engagement in culturally compatible foods, which jeopardize the success of this program. The standards were put in place to ensure optimized nutrition, and respectively, there has been large amounts of research done that establishes the fact that meals have increased in nutritional quality in the school lunch program since the implementation of the stricter guidelines. However, an increase in nutritive properties of meals does not indicate a decrease in children's hunger. Stricter guidelines have caused a decrease in entree items. One school district in Washington State reported that the variety of entrees decreased by over 44%. While the guidelines have aimed to make children healthier, we would argue that simply making the guidelines stricter does not increase health or nutritional status. However, when looking at smaller programs such as community-based and farm to table programs, we saw a dramatic increase of fruit and vegetable consumption among children, especially those with previously low intake, as well as a deeper understanding of nutrition education and student empowerment surrounding meal choice, proving that local programs as well as parent involvement are both key stakeholders in improving the nutritional quality and participation of school lunch. A major takeaway of this point is that we see the stricter guidelines making it more difficult for schools to create tasteful, sustainable, and culturally appropriate meals that students prefer and will actually eat. Without these components, there is reduced physical participation that is not necessarily taken into account when just looking at the simple numbers of participants in the program. And unfortunately, this leaves students that rely on this program still hungry and still needing food from outside of school, which has put an increased burden on low-income families, making the program almost pointless for these individuals. Guidelines may also not allow for the fulfillment of energy requirements for children who are more active or who are not able to eat breakfast or get snacks sent from home. Lastly, a perspective that is worth looking at is the fact that these federal guidelines take parents out of the nutrition planning process, which has been proven to be detrimental when trying to combat obesity, which was another major driving factor of the stricter guidelines in the first place. Taking parents out of the equation hurts efforts to decrease childhood obesity, and simply a national food lunch program may create perceived equality for students, but it does not create equity. So next, Ms. Jamie is going to have our second point.
Hi, I am Jamie, and our second key point in opposition to federal school nutrition standards is that federally standardized school nutrition and lunch programs can create a humiliating stigma for those who participate and qualify for them. In schools, reduced or free lunch can segregate low-income students and make them feel both isolated and embarrassed. Furthermore, physical segregation of paying and non-paying students in the cafeteria can result in racial segregation. This is because minority students participate in the National School Lunch Program at a disproportionately high rate. Those who are below 130% of the federal poverty line are eligible to receive a free lunch. And according to the US Census in 2019, the poverty rate for Blacks was 18.8%, 15.7% for Hispanics, and 7.3% for non-Hispanic whites. Though these rates are historically low for Blacks and Hispanics, the minority groups are still experiencing poverty at a higher rate. It is also seen that some students will refrain from participating in the program due to the class stigma that comes from being a participant. Students are prevented from signing up for the NSLP by the fear of being discriminated against. This can have detrimental effects on not only their health, but the quality of their academic performance and development as well. Federal lunch programs in schools do create access to a meal for students who are in need, but not without creating a divide between those who qualify and those who don't. Those who do can be shamed for getting free lunch, in turn dehumanizing them for accepting and participating in a program that was made to assist them. In the article titled, "You Are Where You Eat, Discrimination in the NSLP," children were quoted saying things like, the cafeteria was for poor kids, and that the ghetto children were the ones who ate the free lunches. These direct quotes further solidified the separation between the classes. A national school survey showed that a third of responding high schools separated the free lunches from those that needed to be paid for, with some setting the lines up in completely different rooms. This allows for those participating in the federal program to be easily identified and singled out. There is also the dilemma of students who are unable to pay back their lunch debts, having to get second-tier meals. When a student has accrued lunch debt, they are sometimes granted a grace period or are given a slip that states their debt. They are then given a lunch like a peanut butter sandwich instead of a fully balanced lunch meal. This is due to schools not getting reimbursed for these meals. At the end of the 2016 to 2017 school year, 75% of school districts reported having meal debt, with the average being $2,500. In order to combat their debt, some schools have sent debt collectors to families, have had kids clean tables after lunch, and one school in Alabama went as far as stamping "I need lunch money" on the arms of students whose accounts were running low. The current standards in place are a burden to both students and their school districts. Humiliation around the topic of food security at an early age has a negative, detrimental impact on a child's social and emotional development, as well as their relationship with food and nutrition. Participating students can experience stigmatization, resulting in unequal treatment, increased barriers, and a decreased feeling of self-worth and self-esteem. And now, Jackie will take you through our third key point.
Hello, I am Jackie. Our third key point is an alternative approach that is geared to be more culturally conscious and provide more autonomy to local schools rather than enforcing a universal school nutrition program. Within this new program, we would like to build some policies that offer change for the better. We would like to develop policies that are able to pay local registered dietitians or nutrition professionals to create and implement a nutrition program that local districts would be satisfied with. Cultures are diverse and change from region to region, city to city, and state to state. It is important for schools to have culturally appropriate foods that these children enjoy eating. Dietitians have a unique role in the school system, and they have many jobs to do as well, such as menu planning. They are able to introduce farm to school programs and ideas to better equip the school. They are also nutrition educators and do a lot of the management and marketing for the schools, as well as communications with parents. The United States' current program does not require individual schools or even individual school districts to mandate the use of a dietitian or nutrition professional. Sometimes one dietitian may be overworked because they have so many schools to take care of. Many schools suffer because of the lack of access to nutrition professionals regarding children's meals and health. This policy would allow nutrition professionals to utilize small holders and farmers as well. Dietitians could also help to ensure meals are nutritious and economic. Another policy that would be put in place would allow for schools to purchase food from local smallholders and farmers rather than relying on the government subsidized items. Tax breaks or reimbursements would be put in place for the schools or the farmers for local food purchasing. This serves as an incentive to encourage farmers and schools to participate in this program and help compensate for the cost differences. This policy change would benefit both school districts and farmers by allowing schools to practice autonomy and farmers to be included in the community and be compensated for costs. If we could include this program into the budget, the overall effect would be more sustainable than our current practices and adds business to our local economy. The food that schools currently purchase come from government subsidized items. These goods are usually lower quality or standard than what you might be finding in your kitchen at home or in restaurants. This action of dumping low quality foods onto our children through our education system is not good or ideal. The truth of the matter is that many schools would like to purchase quality foods from local farmers and smallholders. However, the schools cannot afford the cost difference between the local goods and the foods provided by the government. A common goal for many schools is the ability to have a school-run garden. Having a policy in place that implements schools and the use of garden produce in the kitchen for school meals can help promote the consumption of fruits and vegetables. As children learn to grow their own food in this process, it will encourage them to be mindful of how food is grown. Students will also learn how the food system works. There could also be additional food in the kitchen provided from the garden. And these foods can be added to different meals to encourage kids to eat them as well. A study done in Southern Arizona, researchers evaluated the impact of school gardens on 3rd and 4th graders from 4 elementary schools. each using different methods of gardening with the children. But they found the more exposure a child had to the gardening, it was related to an increase of positive feelings towards fruits and vegetables. Studies have also shown that children are more likely to consume and desire fruits and vegetables when gardens are integrated in their learning. This approach aims to give nutrition professionals autonomy and create healthy school nutrition program that caters to local schools and communities. It also allows schools to utilize gardens and teach children how the food system works. The long-term goal is to create a sustainable way to feed schools and ensure proper nutrition. Closing us up is going to be Danielle again.
All right, thank you, Jackie. So today our pod argued 3 major key points that display the adverse effects of enforcing school nutrition standards. To recap, we thoroughly discussed how strict guidelines can result in various negative consequences, how federally standardized school nutrition and lunch programs can create a humiliating stigma for some individuals, and lastly, how implementing and enforcing a policy that supports job creation, bettering the food system, and allows locals to have more autonomy with school nutrition. Our alternative approach will result in a model that is sustainable, as it will not be heavily influenced by federal guidelines, as these guidelines do not always consider diversity and complete autonomy. The other side is flawed, as enforcing global school nutrition standards and guidelines comes with many negative effects and consequences and displays more harm than good, with the evidence discussed in the above sections. To recap, our counterpart pod fails to consider that a universal school lunch program does not cater to all students. Research from Chatterjee et al. Displays that most local students, parents, and school staff felt that the program contained foods with insufficient portion sizes and overall poor quality. The study also found that students were eating more unhealthy foods outside of class hours, as the school nutrition choices were not appetizing or appealing to the local students. Our opposing pod also does not take into consideration that reduced or free lunches through various federal programs can indirectly cause segregation for low-income students. Ms. Jamie discussed the delicate subject of how universal nutrition standards can create a divide between students depending on free lunch qualifications. The article, "You Are Where You Eat: Discrimination in the NSLP National School Lunch Program," displayed strong evidence that solidifies how federal programs enforced can result in humiliating stigma and cause indirect segregation between the students. Our group strongly believes that all school-age children should have access to a nutritional, safe, tasteful, and culturally appropriate autonomous school lunch without feeling embarrassed or segregated from their peers. We believe that federal governments should no longer be fully responsible for creating national guidelines. Our new alternative approach allows for locals to have more say in what their children eat during school hours. The policy we envision gives nutrition professionals, school districts, parents, and smallholders the responsibility that could make way for a more prosperous and sustainable food model. We greatly appreciate everyone who took the time to watch our debate video while keeping an open mind regarding our key points to support the local selection of school food rather than enforcing universal school nutrition standards. We appreciate y'all watching our video. Thank you.